Good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 here at Newstalk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The House Republicans today, led by Congressman Barry Loudermilk out of Georgia, have released what they are billing as their second January 6, 2021 report, taking a closer look at the events of that day and what the Nancy Pelosi-led so-called January 6 committee refused to tell you and actively tried to cover up. In the findings today, one of the things they recommend is criminal consequences for Liz Cheney. They want her investigated for criminal witness tampering, as the New York Post summarizes today, that she was involved in witness tampering with a star witness while serving as vice chairman of the since disbanded House Select Committee that investigated the 2021 Capitol riot. Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson, a first-term White House aide to then-President Trump, communicated via the encrypted Signal app before her explosive and later largely debunked public testimony in June of 2022, according to documents previously released by the House Republicans. Citing those communications, the Committee on House Administration's Subcommittee on Oversight today issued a report calling for the Justice Department to investigate Cheney as Trump prepares to retake the White House. So there's that component. Additionally, the report lays out in really stark detail who's to blame for not having the National Guard present at the Capitol, not having the added security needed to secure the Capitol. And in fact, on Barry Loudermilk's opening letter on this report, he says the following: over the course of the 118th Congress, the Subcommittee on Oversight has worked many late nights and numerous weekends in their relentless pursuit of truth. We interviewed hundreds of witnesses, scoured over millions of pages of documents, analyzed thousands of hours of surveillance videos, listened to hundreds of hours of radio communications, and conducted hearings. I appreciate my team's commitment to the mission as well as their unwavering dedication to this vitally important cause. Every member and staff member of this subcommittee deserves the gratitude of those whose reputations have been restored, as well as those who have been exonerated by the evidence that they have exposed. From the D.C. National Guard, who are maligned by false reports from the Pentagon, to the former chief of Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, who unfairly shouldered the bulk of the blame for the security failures of that day. Many have had a level of hope restored due to the work of this subcommittee. Have they? Well, let's ask Chief Sund, the former head of the Capitol Police, the author of Courage Under Fire, joins us now. Sir, good to have you back on the show.
Vince, it is great to be back on your show today.
Okay, so this report comes out, and on page 1, your name is mentioned immediately by Barry Loudermilk, who says that you were maligned here. Tell us what it reveals.
I got to tell you, Vince, I think the committee's done a great job. I think Barry Loudermilk's done a great job. When I got a copy of that sent to me, and I opened up and I got to page 1 and I saw that, I'll tell you, I've waited a hell of a long time to be vindicated and exonerated by Congress. To sit down there and look on page 1 and see your name listed to the word exonerated for what I've had to go through for the last 4 years has been incredible. So many people have had to go through. I don't, want to make myself a point of this, but, it is my name on that first page. And I feel bad for everyone that's had to suffer because of January 6th. But to see that absolutely floored me. And I appreciate the hard work they've done. And, I got to tell you, Nancy Pelosi goes on national TV within hours of us regaining control of the Capitol and says it's a failure of leadership at the top. It calls me out by name, forces me to resign just months away from being eligible to retire, and strips me of all my benefits. And now it's all coming true. The facts are coming out. It's a good day when the truth finally sees the light.
So you actually don't get to collect your retirement benefits because of what Nancy Pelosi did?
No, don't. No, I have not been able to collect them. Now, some of the other people you may have heard, my intelligence, a person that was running some of the intelligence force was allowed to leave 5 months early and collect her retirement benefits. The general at the Pentagon who was repeatedly denying me the ability to send National Guard to my assistance while I'm begging for assistance, even on the phone while Ashley Babbitt's shot, retires. Everybody that is out there. We're now finding out Mark Milley had said to me specifically on the 3rd, he does not want military on the streets of D.C. There's so many people that stood in the way of us having effective security there in advance. And I got to tell you, Barry Loudermilk's investigation, he did 2 reports. The previous report specifically says if the sergeant at arms, and specifically Pelosi sergeant at arms, that denied me National Guard support in advance had approved my request for National Guard, and I made multiple requests, they wouldn't have breached the Capitol. We wouldn't be here talking right now. So it was a cascading failure from the very beginning.
So what you're getting at is you talked about how you were trying to put the Capitol in a position where it was well prepared for anything, and you were denied. And then Nancy Pelosi, who is responsible for the security of the Capitol, then as Speaker of the House, who the Sergeant at Arms reported to, it was actually Nancy Pelosi's fault that things were in such disarray and not yours. And yet she turned around, scapegoated you, and deprived you of a retirement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not only did they deny me in advance, and think about this, this is what shocks people. And this is one of the reasons I put the after action together and wrote. And I got to tell you, I've never seen a more read copy of my book, Courage Under Fire, than what Representative Loudermilk had. Is the fact that not only am I denied on the 3rd, even on the 6th, while we're under attack for 71 minutes, I repeatedly called almost a dozen times to the Sergeant at Arms and repeatedly was denied to bring in any support from my men and women. But I went ahead and said, I'm just going to go ahead and bypass. When I started calling every law enforcement agency I could, brought in 17 law enforcement agencies, 1,700 officers, and was still forced to leave.
Given everything you know now about all of the players involved, and that includes President Trump requested, it's now well established, the president pled with the Democrats to accept 10,000 National Guard troops to protect the nation's capital. He had asked for them to be ready on January 6th, and it was the Defense Department that created resistance. In fact, the Federalist summarizes some of the report today, saying Acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller dismissed President Trump's January 3rd order to use any and all military assets necessary to ensure safety for the planned demonstrations on January 6th. That's the report says today. To date, no investigation or disciplinary action has taken place against Acting Secretary of Defense Miller for his failure to follow directives from the sitting commander-in-chief. Miller had reportedly told the Defense Department Inspector General, quote, "There was absolutely no way I was putting U.S. military forces at the Capitol." This came despite the fact that the government had placed federal troops in the Capitol during the prior summer to handle the George Floyd riots. And one more for you, Chief Sund, as I read through these. House investigators also reported that Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy, quote, intentionally delayed the D.C. National Guard response as demonstrators descended on the Capitol on January 6th of 2021. Given what we know in retrospect, who do you think are the bad actors here, and who do you think are the guys who actually had their heads on right?
So hearing that, my blood boils when I think about that, because Ryan McCarthy withheld the QRF, the Quick Reaction Force, 40 people that were trained for civil disobedience. The National Guard were with eyesight of the Capitol, and they wouldn't let them come for hours. And I was on the phone begging them, while the Pentagon started sending people to the generals' homes to protect them. I've had a lot of people say, well, President Trump, he should have sent the troops. He delegated that authority to the Secretary of the Defense, who delegated it to the Secretary of the Army. He expected his subordinates to do their JOB, and they didn't. They sat on their behinds while they were watching us suffering up at the Capitol, and I was begging them for assistance, even to the point where when we had the shooting, I finally said, "Hey, we have a shooting inside the Capitol. Is that urgent now enough for you?" And that was witnessed by, Mayor Bowser was on the phone, Chief Conte was on the phone, Colonel Earl Matthews with the military was on the phone, and they've now come out and spoken on my behalf, a number of them. So I'm just glad that the truth's finally getting out.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, how much power does she have in this equation? If it's just a matter of if she asks for it, it happens. If she had asked for the National Guard, if she didn't deny you, then we would have had nothing like what we saw January 6, 2021.
100%. And the other thing, real quick, is everybody that messed up, no one has been had any discipline against them whatsoever. You're talking to the one single person in this whole January 6th equation that are working up there, or effectively in security or anything like that really had any form of discipline held against them. And I was the one trying to get assistance before, during the attack. So I'm sorry, your last question.
Yes. Oh, I was just saying about Nancy Pelosi. She's she really is the decision maker here, and she abandoned you. She abandoned the United States Capitol. She turned it over to chaos when President Trump was literally asking in advance for National Guard support to make sure that things went smoothly that day.
Right, and she carries a lot of. She's a very, very powerful person up on the Hill. Carried a lot of weight then. Could have easily made that happen if we had gotten approval on the 3rd. And I've worked with the Department of Defense. I've deployed, I've sworn in thousands of National Guard. That's what they're not aware of. I've done defense support for civil authorities many, many times. We would have done an assessment. They would have come over. We would walk through grounds. All I wanted was unarmed National Guard to stand the perimeter with my officers, because I only had 272 officers for the perimeter. That would have been an effective deterrent. Then we can talk about what happened with Intel. That's a whole other ballgame. But even just having the military, that would have been a game changer for us.
So a lot of people's lives have been destroyed as a result of the events of January 6th. And one of obviously the key takeaway here is none of that would have transpired were it not for the manipulation being done by the Democrats and various people within the United States Department of Defense. What would you like to see happen next, Chief Sund, now that we have the benefit of at least all of these facts coming out?
Well, I think it's the first sentence of the conclusion in the congressional report says January 6th was preventable. I absolutely agree with that. We need to make sure that the politicization, one, of the security on Capitol Hill is completely removed, and I don't think it is. Two, the politicization and the weaponization of lawfare, that's concerning. One of the things I talk about is not only January 6th, I talk about the 2020 riots. We had, January 6th was 5 hours of riots at the Capitol. The May 30th and June 1st, 2020 riots over at the White House was 2 days of riots at the White House. 186 people were injured. More officers were injured there, yet not a single prosecution. No. So that raised a lot of concerns there. So we need to watch out for that. I think when people lose faith in their Department of Justice and they feel the blindfold's been torn off, Lady Justice,
yes,
it just create division in the country, and we need to somehow address that.
And Chief Sund, we're awaiting yet another report. Barry Loudermilk indicated in today's announcement that there will be a report on the alleged pipe bombs outside of the RNC and the DNC. They write that the subcommittee conducted an extensive review of the investigation into the 2 pipe bombs on January 5th and 6th, and that report is set to be released within the next few days. Does it boggle your mind that we haven't had any sort of meaningful, clear answers on that issue this many years later?
Yeah, absolutely. When you go and you look at it, this is probably one of the most secure areas, one of the most secure cities in the world. Cameras everywhere, cell phone tracking capabilities, and the cell phone data is corrupted. We can't track a person. We can tell you exactly what time they're on their cell phone, but we can't go back. We can't track that down, but we can track down a number of other people. I think the cell phone, whoever placed the 2 pipe bombs, and they were identical pipe bombs, manufactured the exact same way, constructed the same way. So same person helped coordinate those and deploy them. That's the biggest key that's still outstanding, and I still can't believe we haven't been able to solve that yet.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of like drones hovering above New Jersey. There's a lot of suspicious disinterest in that story. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, Barry Loudermilk and company come out with something useful. In the meantime, Chief Sund, former U.S. Capitol Police Chief, author of Courage Under Fire, thank you, sir. Really appreciate you joining us today for the breaking news. A lot of people have had their lives upended because of January 6th. The January 6th defendants right there at the top of the list. President Trump is ready to move on pardons, he says, immediately. It seems like he's not even going to wait. This is a day one priority, he's been saying. Also, You remember this guy, Colonel Earl Matthews, testified to Congress that, and just for perspective, he was the top lawyer for the D.C. National Guard on January 6th of 2021. And here's his testimony this year in April about why the National Guard was delayed.
Colonel Matthews, same question for you. Do you believe that deployment of the D.C. National Guard was delayed?
Yes, sir. I believe that it was a result of an overcautious, reluctant, hesitant, facilitating leadership. And I think they were concerned about the optics, the political optics of a military presence here. And I don't think they trusted the commander-in-chief. And I think that was because of our senior-ranking military officer who was making disparaging remarks about the president to them.
Yeah, and that was his testimony in April. But he made this testimony before Congress. He came out with this whistleblower complaint. He was explaining that basically you had all these people in the chain of command who were ignoring the orders of the commander-in-chief to give military support to the Capitol. And guess what happened to him? Well, let me see. Go to military.com reported. Army officer alleges retaliation over testimony on slow National Guard response to January 6th. A colonel who was the top lawyer for the D.C. National Guard at the time accused Army officials of retaliating against him for disputing two generals' accounts of why the National Guard was slow to deploy during the attack on the Capitol. In that whistleblower reprisal complaint, filed in October, that would be of 23, and made public in January of this year, Colonel Earl Matthews, now a member of the Army Reserve, alleged he was passed over for promotion and publicly kicked out of a conference he was assigned to for work in retaliation for testifying to Congress that two Army generals were, quote, absolute and unmitigated liars in how they described the military's response to the insurrection. So there you go. So the guys who are telling the truth, the guys who want you to know more, are punished for revealing it. Just absolutely disgraceful. Par for the course for the Biden era. It can't end soon enough. Stay with us on the Vince Coglianese Show. Well, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. You know, there are a lot of crappy George S's on the left. Did you know that? George Soros, George Stephanopolous. Well, those are the two I can think of right now. But they're out there. Keep your head on a swivel. Well, George Stephanopolous this week lost a bout with President Trump. You should think clearly before you pick a fight with the guy. ABC, as you know, is paying $15 million to settle a defamation suit brought by President Trump against the network. The New York Times reporting earlier this week that they're set to pay that $15 million settlement. The agreement, they write, was a significant concession by a major news organization and a rare victory for a media-bashing politician whose previous litigation efforts against news outlets have often ended in defeat. Under the terms of the settlement revealed on Saturday, ABC News will donate $15 million to Mr. Trump's future presidential foundation and museum. I love that. The network and its star anchor, George Stephanopoulos, also published a statement saying they, quote, regret remarks made about Mr. Trump during a televised interview in March. ABC News, which is owned by the Walt Disney Company, will pay Mr. Trump an additional $1 million for his legal fees. That brings us to $16 million. Now, it's funny. Let me see how far it takes for me to get to it. It's like 30 paragraphs down before the New York Times even bothers to tell you what George Stephanopoulos said on air. So you see what the framing is. The framing is like, oh, this is Trump attacking the media and getting his pound of flesh out of them, that mean old nasty Mr. Trump. And meanwhile, they tell you many, many paragraphs down that Mr. Trump sued ABC and Mr. Stephanopoulos in March after the anchor asked Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, who has spoken publicly about being raped as a teenager. There's a lot of commas in this sentence. Why she had continued to support Mr. Trump after he was found, quote, liable for rape in a 2023 civil case in Manhattan. So the lie was left to the very end of that very unwieldy run-on sentence. Instead of Mr. Stephanopoulos accused Mr. Trump of being found liable for rape, which was untrue. That's a short, terse recitation of the facts. I played it earlier as an example of one of the lies of the year, but here's George Stephanopoulos saying on 4 occasions just in this audio that Donald Trump was found liable for rape, which is completely false.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a civil court. It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting
me. You're
someone who's been found liable for rape. Actually, I'm not trying to.
You are. That's exactly.
You're not
what
answering
you're
the
doing.
question.
I think it's disgusting.
Well, you're welcome to say that, but you have to answer the question. Why are you supporting someone who's been found liable for rape?
Four times he said it. All of them untrue. All of them untrue. As I mentioned before, and I'll reiterate now, the jury, on their jury form, had an option. Do you find him liable for rape? Yes or no? The no box is checked. No, they do not find him liable for rape in that civil case, which I should remind you, the E. Jean Carroll civil case against President Trump was funded by LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman. He's the one who funded the attack on Trump. Reid Hoffman is the guy who Elon Musk told Tucker Carlson. He said he's very concerned. This is Elon's hunch. He's very concerned that the Jeffrey Epstein client list is going to go public, and he would like to desperately stop Donald Trump from being elected. Just to put all the pieces together for you here on the players who are involved. So George, carrying water on behalf of the most dishonest elements of the establishment left, says 4 times something that is completely untrue. And now, as President Trump perhaps hoped, the legacy media are rattled. They don't know what to do. They've never encountered this before. Normally they can lie with impunity. Wait a second. $15 million? There are people who are angry at ABC right now. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're encouraging him. Here's Chuck Todd and Chris Cillizza chatting on the latter gentleman's podcast.
This was stunning to me and absolutely a gut punch to anybody that works at a major media company, because I think it sets a precedent that is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to get out from under potentially.
You know what the precedent is? That you have to tell the truth. That's the precedent. It's a very difficult precedent. This idea that you have to tell the truth. And you know, so one of the crazy things, you know, on The View, Sonny Hostin has to issue legal disclaimers like every 5 minutes because they're consistently defaming Donald Trump or the people around him. You know what I mean? I've played a bunch of them here on the program, but it's Sonny Hostin, who is supposed to be the lawyer on the panel. Trust me, if you need a lawyer, do not go to Sonny Hostin. It's not going to work out well for you. She has to be the lawyer, so she has to read these legal disclaimers, and there are always these ridiculous corrections to the disgraceful lies that were told in the last segment. And the reason for that is because ABC has a legal department. This is the same ABC, by the way, which just paid a $15 million settlement. They have a legal department, which is supposed to review especially things that could put the network in legal peril. And if you're going to make ridiculous claims about Donald Trump, you damn well better know what the actual legality of all of this is. Donald Trump was not found liable for rape. That was a lie that George Stephanopoulos advanced. And President Trump's lawyers clearly made such a compelling case that this is open and shut defamation that ABC said they didn't want the hassle. And they didn't want to expose their people to having to sit down for depositions and really going through their laundry, going through discovery, finding out what was really happening behind the scenes, what the emails revealed. ABC knew that there was enough damning evidence available that they needed to settle this thing in quickly. All right, what do you want? We'll pay for the library. $15 million? Done. We'll cut you a check. So President Trump scores a quick victory on these guys. as a result. But they knew they had problems here. And Chuck Todd and Chris Liz are talking about it. And Chuck Todd, you just heard him say it a moment ago. He's really worried about the precedent this is going to set. What? What are you talking about? I've been involved in news gathering and commentary for many years now. If it's something that is very legally involved and you want to make sure you don't want to accuse anybody of anything, you always offer the predicate, the qualifier that people are allegedly the person who committed the crime, they're the suspect. You have to be as careful as possible because the goal is like you don't want to defame somebody, especially obviously if what you're saying ends up not actually applying to them. So you offer every possible qualifier to explain it. And that's not what George Stephanopoulos did. He just lied. He just straight up lied to the audience. He defamed Donald Trump. And Chuck Todd is nervous about this. Why? Why are you nervous about this? Is this something you do on a routine basis? Now you feel like you're not going to be able to lie about people so easily without fearing consequences?
I just, I think the risk of losing this suit was 5%.
Right.
Like 50%.
For ABC.
For ABC.
Yeah.
So,
no.
It's
open and shut. It's so crystal clear it was a lie.
This was a decision to buy off a bad PR.
To buy off bad PR. To try and escape it. Brian Stelter, who, does he work for CNN now? Again? Back and forth. He's like a Frisbee. He just comes back. A very hefty Frisbee. They fired him. They took his show away. They fired him, and then he came crawling back to work for them? I don't know what that says, but here he is.
Brian,
with Jim Acosta, the two of them.
I mean, this is pretty unusual and disturbing. What do you make of all this and this ugly legal fight that is trying to be avoided by ABC and Disney?
Right. Trump has a long history of filing lawsuits, including against news outlets. Most of the time, those cases get thrown out. Judges see right through those frivolous cases and throw.
No, it's not that. Trump is a public figure. The standards here are really very high to establish that you've defamed a public figure, especially of President Trump's stature. Again, it is crystal clear that George Stephanopoulos absolutely stepped in it. And they have him dead to rights. And so if Brian Stelter, if Jim Acosta, if Chuck Todd, if Chris Cillizza were actually engaging in genuine analysis, real objective reporting on the subject, we're really looking at it with clear eyes, they could even admit their politics in all of this. You hate to see it. You hate to see President Trump win one. But the truth is, he had George Stephanopoulos dead to rights. And George should have never said that. He was dishonest. He lied. And it was smart of ABC to do this settlement because they want to get this behind them as soon as possible, but they really need to get control of George. But no, they didn't say anything like that.
Put them out. Trump right now has litigation pending against CBS, for example, over a 60 Minutes interview of Kamala Harris. So these cases
a very dishonest 60 Minutes representation of Kamala Harris. Now, well established. They hacked up her incoherent answers and then gave you something completely different in the final broadcast as an in-kind contribution to her campaign, which of course failed.
Oftentimes do not work out for Trump. But this ABC case is a major victory. I talked to renowned First Amendment lawyer Floyd Abrams last night. He said, look, there's no way to say other than this is a big win for Trump. It's going to embolden him to file more of these suits. But as Abrams said, he called it...
Well, then don't lie about them and you'll have no problem.
...disturbing that this could turn $15 million could be paid around the use of the word rape versus sexual abuse in that interview on ABC's This Week.
The jury form,
Stephanopoulos has been
the jury form literally says no. There's a huge checkbox.
Trump target for a long time. He was very aggressive in this interview that aired in March. So Trump decided to file a suit about a week later. And a judge did not throw it out. A judge let it go forward through the discovery process. So it's possible that ABC decided to settle this, Jim, because there might have been embarrassing emails or text messages on ABC's servers that were going to become public.
Now we're getting closer to the truth, aren't we? That discovery would not have gone well for ABC. Megyn Kelly reacted to all of this. She said, ABC and company, they're a bunch of idiots.
You're idiots. Stephanopoulos is an idiot, and so are his producers. Because let me tell you, in all my years at Fox, never mind my short stint in NBC, the producers have a couple of main jobs. One is
listen to this, Corey. Listen to this. This is very important.
To arm the anchor with facts. Fail. Okay, fail there. And two is to protect the anchor.
Do you protect me? I don't like that. I'm not getting an enthusiastic enough confirmation.
Protect the anchor. And so if the anchor is out there saying something colossally stupid, usually if you have a great producer, they'll get in your ear to say, no, it's this. No, it's that. Be careful.
That literally happened earlier. For those of you who stay with us for all 3 hours, remember I was talking about a Kristen Welker Donald Trump interview, and I was insisting it had just happened a few weeks ago. And Corey, who you couldn't hear because he spoke directly into my ear, said, no, in fact, that interview was from December of 2023. And we seamlessly presented it to you on the air. You would have never known it were I not reliving it right now to emphasize the point that Megyn Kelly is making. Actually, I'm just kidding. I talked my way all the way through it as Corey was telling me that.
It happens with me all the time on this show. My producers, the ones who run herd on various segments that I'm doing, if they realize I've said something inaccurate or that I'm searching for a fact, are constantly in my ears. That's why I wear these headphones to say, it's this or it's that. This whole thing that you're watching and listening to is a team effort. And I don't
know what kind of team she has. I've got Corey. I've got Dave. I'm looking at Dave. We're the team. That's the whole team.
Times that, 100 times that on ABC broadcast news and a Sunday show like the one George Stephanopoulos sits for. Partisan hack.
Partisan hack. You let him have it, Megan. And now President Trump isn't done. He's emboldened. Well, yeah, he sure is. Here he is yesterday talking to the press. He did a big press conference yesterday about who else he'd like to sue. He's got some other lawsuits in mind. Take a listen to this.
Coming on. I want to expand on the defamation lawsuits. Could you see moving that to other people with individual platforms, social media influencers, people that...
Or newspapers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I think you have to do it because they're very dishonest. We need a great media. We need a fair media. We need, it's very important. And we need borders. We need walls, but we need borders, and we need fair elections. You look at California, millions and millions of ballots were sent out. They're still counting the vote in California.
He goes off on the weave on that particular issue for a moment, and then he comes back to, as he does with the weave, the issue of the media and the lies.
A few others that I'm doing. I'm going to, as an example, I'm doing this not because I want to. I'm doing this because I feel I have an obligation to. I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time. And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story all over the world because...
It was actually double digits, right? He's understating the extent to which she claimed that President Trump was going to lose Iowa. It was I believe the final survey was double-digit polling. No? It was Kamala +3. I'm wrong. And look, there it is again. There he is. Look at that. Excellent production. Okay, so there you go.
I was going to win Iowa by 20 points. The farmers love me, and I love the farmers. And it was interesting the way she did it. She brought it down 2 weeks before. She said I was going to only win by 4. That was a big story. But that was good because she brought it down from like 22 points to 4 or whatever the number was. Way up. An easy win. We never even thought to go there. I respect them. I love them. And they understand there's no reason to go there because she brought it from way up, walk away, which it was. And it turned out to be in the election, too, by the way. It was a win by many, many points. And then she brought it down very smartly to 4 a couple of weeks before. And everyone said, wow, that's amazing. He's only up by 4 points. Then she brought it down to where I was down by 3 or 4, whatever number she used. And that was the Des Moines Register. And it was their parent. And in my opinion, it was fraud and it was election interference. You know, she's gotten me right always. She's a very good pollster. She knows what she was doing. And she then quit before. and we'll probably be filing a major lawsuit against him today or tomorrow.
Yeah, and in fact, he did do that very thing today. He did it today. Trump won Iowa by 13 points, just in case you were wondering. The Washington Post reports Congress is near a deal to avert a government shutdown. They're handling spending just before Christmas. Never usually goes well. Updates tomorrow. Stay with us here on WMAL.